Well, YouTubers, we are back here at my end scale train stuff, looking at two ScaleTrains locomotives. You've already seen the SD40-3. Now it's time to look at two Mighty N-Scale ET44AH, better known in ScaleTrains as the Tier 4 GEVO. As you can see, I've brought a very unique amount of some Bachmann Easy Track that makes for some much wider curves, which I think is the perfect amount of curvature needed. I just hope that if I create a bumpy spot, the way I plugged it in, the way it goes under the plug, I hope it won't have any cars that I'm going to demonstrate with derail. But we're going to compromise on that very, very soon. Now, before we pull our locomotives out, we're going to show the difference in between packages. So recently as well with the SD40, I have kind of shown you as by then that this is what the very first packages that kept the locomotive inside looked like when they were shipped to us. The box was red with a white outline of the locomotive. And then on this end, it would show you what road name you're getting. So this was, I believe, purchased in 2018, so about 7 years ago. So that's why they call this a 2015 production. And this road number 3250 was the first locomotive of this type delivered to CSX, and I'm glad to still have this model. And also recently purchased along with the SD40-3, purchased another ET44, this time in the form of a 2016 production, as it would say, with the angled exhaust housing. And I'll show you what that means once I get these out of the box. You're going to really uniquely want to eye the differences. Road number I've got for this is number 3451. Although the first 2016 production was number 3378, but ScaleTrains long sold out of that model. Although I'm glad I got this one, because you're going to really want to eye some color differences. So, you've seen the two different styles of locomotive packaging, so all that's left for me to do now is pull out these two Mighties. Alright, here they are now out of the box, sitting on their packaging. One purchased in 2018, and another purchased this year in 2024. Even though I think that version was released in like late 2023, there's not much of these left. But let's start eyeballing the differences. We'll start with the older release. So here's a closer look at number 3250. As you can see, it has a much different antenna array on the top of its cab. And you notice how they have the exhaust housing a little bit squared off. Yeah, that's what the early versions of these Tier 4 compliant GEVO locomotives looked like. But one thing that hasn't changed is the giant size of these radiators like that are angled down instead of flat like the Tier 3s. Although a little bit of detail has changed a little bit, unfortunately, on this side. Because I gotta tell you, this is true when it comes to an N-scale model of these, that the grab iron handrails on the side are very, very flimsy. Some of them were unsticking, so I had to use a few dots of super glue to get them back in. And if you can see on one part of the fuel tank, I'll try to point that out, because this time I brought something to point it out. Right about here, that's where you'll eye a bit of a glue blob over there. I didn't use glue over there. You can also see just how flimsy the handrails have been over there. But I don't know what to tell you. This is N-scale model railroading for you. I can't really blame them for any of that happening. Anything can happen to an N-scale model, even in proportional details like this. But what matters is that I promise it's still very operational. And I didn't point that to you on the SD40-3, that it too would have these things that are colored red, which are where they would bolt some spare knuckles for the coupler back here or up front, because they're always preparing for that stuff. I don't know what kind of motorcycle that is, I kept hearing. So yeah, here's another look that we've had of the early sampling, number 3250. Still an awesome looking one. Now let's take a look at the number 3451. So from the get start, as you can see, they have redid the PTC antenna arrays on the top of the cab. In fact, this kind of PTC debuted on locomotive number 3440, which was known as Spirit of Raviana, but they got rid of that thing as a way to celebrate Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation, but that's all done and over with. And if you look over at the exhaust housing, see how the exhaust housing is a little bit more angled compared to what you see here on the number 3250. This is what I was really trying to show you. So yeah, number 3250, you got the squared off exhaust housing. Number 3451, angled, because that was a trouble that both CSX and NS were having when loading up with coal over at the coal mine. So they angled it down like that to match the radiator area. So yeah, I really applaud ScaleTrains' efforts for this. You'll also notice somehow the shades of blue on these YN3B color schemes are a little bit different. If you look closely here at the number 3250, you'll notice that it's a little bit of a darker blue, nearly a tiny bit gray hueish, while this one is definitely, as you can see, a little bit more of a vibrant blue. Yeah, take a look at that. Very, very vibrant blue. I knew that eventually, if ScaleTrains wanted to come even more of a longer way, they would do such a thing. Behind the cab, you got your dynamic brake housing, the K5LA air horns, angled exhaust right next to the squared off exhaust. So that's how you can see the differences in between a 2015 and a 2016 production. Of course, they both got the same kind of radiator fan sizes. Also, the walkways are a little bit different. The walkway on here is actually noticeably a little bit more smoother, while the walkway on this one has a little bit of some treading on it, if you can listen carefully. Hear that? Still a lot of treading on here, too. Love how it feels against the back of my skewer when I point it out. So now with the two of them side by side, we're going to turn them around. Just let you eye the differences. They both have sand filler hatches in the same areas. 3250 here has a little bit of some crooked areas. What else can I say? N-scale handrails on these modern diesels are always known to be very flimsy. If you look at the conductor's side, those handrails on the number 3451, they're very, very flimsy too, if you look very closely. Sometimes when I zoom in like this, you may almost think you're looking at an HO scale, but in reality, these are N scale. But what do you think of the different hues of blue on these beautiful CSX modern GEVOs like that? not just an ES, but an ET, now in Tier 4 compliance. The most newest and most fastest and most mightiest version of the GEVO that will never disappear for years to come. And I love how ScaleTrains has so much separately applied details. Handrails, grab irons, windshield wipers, all of this separately applied. And down here, you've got receptacle hoses, MU hoses, coupler cut bars, a few walkway lights, all of that separately applied. So when you purchase under the Rivet Counter brand, you'd get the most detail ever. But I did hear there's supposed to be an operator brand as well, which doesn't have a lot of detail on them, but you can add detail. Some of them come with DCC but no sound. Others are DC analog, which means you can add DCC and sound to them from ESU Lock Sound. Of course, these already come with that installed. So they're just about ready to go out of the box. There are even some different sound effects, believe it or not, between these two locomotives that I'm going to have you hear very, very shortly. Other than that, I'm great to have two different... Sorry about that. I'm so happy to have two different looks on the CSX ET44AHs, known in ScaleTrains as the Tier 4 GEVO. So we're going to get these both on the track, and then you can hear the differences on how they sound at startup. They're pretty unique, though. I like them. I also nearly forgot to point out, while these two are now officially on the track before I apply track power, and that would be you should also eye out the difference in the coupler color. So this over here being the first production in ScaleTrains of the Tier 4, you'll notice the coupler is a lot more of a darker brown compared to the newer production by ScaleTrains, where this coupler has a more modern light brown. So yeah, you can see already ScaleTrains has definitely come a long, long way in doing the best they can to perfect some art on a very, very modernized diesel locomotive used for hauling freight trains of all kinds. Not to worry, I do have a freight train ready for these two mighty GEVOs to pull. So, without further ado, let's get ready to apply track power, and then you can hear the difference in between sounds of these two. Alright, now since the number 3250 was the first out of these two modern day GEVOs, we're going to apply track power and start her up first. And as usual, by default, each locomotive is addressed to address number 3. I already addressed number 3451 to address 2. So now the first thing you'll want to hear is the difference between the startup of the prime mover. So let's activate our lights, of course. Ditch lights, headlight, and now the sound. Going to have to hold this up for microphone closely because in N-scale it's kind of hard to hear. I don't know if you could hear that, but there was already a warning bell that usually warns everybody that the engine and the prime mover is starting like that. So I'm not sure if you could hear that, but if you couldn't, I understand. I mean, this is a very small scale of locomotive. I always like how there's a warning sound like that. That also happened on the very first kind of GEVO locomotives as well. And while this one keeps warming up, let's move over to number 3251 and have you listen to the startup sequence on this one. Turning on function mode, activate the ditch lights. Didn't see them quite right. There we go. And the headlight. And now activating the sounds. Yeah, you notice no warning bell that it's starting up? But yeah, it is confirmed that these two are definitely started up. And of course, the thing I enjoy about these lock sound decoders is that there's always some momentum built into these things. Another difference you're about to hear is what the horns sound like. I'm going to skip the bells. Although, for those of you who do know what the bells usually sound like, or who don't, this is what it sounds like, the bell. Now listen to how different the horns would sound, starting on number 3250. Even though the lights blink, they usually only do that when you sound the horn. Now let's move over to 3451 and I'll have you listen to how different that horn sounds. Yeah, even the ditch lights on this one blink just as well. But now let's take a look at the momentum of these two locomotives. Starting with number 3250. I rev it up, and sometimes when I already go down, it just keeps going. That's how we describe momentum. Now let's do number 3251 and check out how the momentum on this one is built. It really gives you the experience as if you're driving a real one. Go down on the throttle already on 0. And this new decoder also has the sound of the brake squeal, which is very interesting. Now let's do this coming back in reverse. Other than that, very nice, smooth drive. Somehow the ditch lights on this one seem to be a little bit more dimmer for some reason. But as long as they work, that's all that's good with me. Let's try to hear something different, like what the dynamic brake would sound like. Just press the number 4 on the function. Move it forward. Slowed it down in the nick of time because you just saw it bump into number 3250. I don't think they coupled up, though. I just checked. No, they didn't. Alright, let's roll it back. This one, I like how there's a brake squeal with it. I guess there's really no telling about the dynamic brake. The 3250 over there definitely has its dynamic brakes. When I press the number 4 button, I'll bring that one back here. No sound of the dynamic brake when I'm in function mode. Kind of a bummer. Of course, the two of them also, as I'm recalling, do still have DPU lighting. You just hit the number 5, and instead of the front headlights being on, these back lights will be lit if it's an end of train DPU. Same thing here for the number 3251. That when you have DPU mode on, these lights, excuse me, forgot to hit function mode. These lights will flash off, and then the back lights would turn on. So that's our DPU lighting. So, gonna get these attached to a freight train, and then you'll see these two running together. Let's do this. Alright, after a lot of time needing to be taken, I did it. I got these two perfectly connected to a manifest train. Looks a lot like M441 or M442, the Waycross to Tampa local. But I don't know if that would be considered a local train. If it's an M symbol, it would have been manifest. But there is a local that does these turns between here and Jax to Waycross called L795 and L796. If you remember those Autorack cars I did a review on long ago, they're still here. And what's not to love about Tropicana? And also that brand new Naked Juice reefer. So without further ado, we're going to start up our Gevos, and then we're going to take the high green. Normally, if this was the L700, I would have had these two locomotives running back to back instead of elephant style or front to nose like this, like that. But for some reason, I'm going to show you on a shorts video on why it's impossible to do that, especially with my Bachmann Easy Command Control Center. I'll show you what the problem is another time in a shorts. But for now, I hope you enjoy this video of them pulling my manifest train, which I think this should mimic, I think, the local L795 or L796, Jacksonville to Waycross. So let's take a high green. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. All the way from startup to shutdown. And yeah, even after their shutdown sequences, they'll do that. Make a few sounds like that. But there you have it. My two CSX ET44AHs. 2018 released, number 3250. And 2023 released into 2024, number 3251. With their combined power, they did a good job pulling my L796 local train, Jacksonville to Waycross. Now I've shut them down and they're going to take a well-needed rest. Yeah, sometimes those sounds of the air goes off a little bit. But that is prototypical. I hope you enjoyed the review, though, nevertheless. I do plan to close out with one more run-by, because I haven't had the chance yet to show you what these would look like if I was doing either a mid or end-of-train DPU. But I think I'll show you a mid-train DPU. But other than that, you get how strong of some pullers these two combined Tier 4 compliant GEVOs are. Very powerful, very mighty, and I love them very, very much. Can't wait till ScaleTrains comes out with these in the future for years to come like that. Everything about them is spot on. They're powerful, and I don't care how they sound as long as they do sound prototypical like they do out in the real world. That's all that matters to me. So, thank you for watching. After one last run-by, I will see you next time out on the N-Scale High Iron. Till next time, this is Cameron at Pinchio Wait, signing and pinching out. Till next time, take care.